Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Subconscious Sundays. I'm your co-host, Reverend April Kling Meyer, and with me is my co-host, Timothy Freeman, hypnosis extraordinaire.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Great to have you with us. We're going to dive right in, but before we do, we always like to set a little bit of intentions and kind of let you know a little bit about the nature of this program. So we always want this to be, we're often discussing potentially heavy, serious topics. So we want to try to make this a fun and entertaining, laid back way to discuss these types of issues we always deal with.
Yeah, and we keep it open and inviting. Welcome to any of you who have questions or comments. So please do not be shy in the comment threads. Just please put your comments up, and we're just happy to have you here. And if you're watching, that's if you're watching live or if you're watching after the fact.
Yeah, and this is for us, and hopefully some of you all too, a little bit of a weekly ritual. We want to gather here with our shared community in a virtual sacred space to share our knowledge and hear your responses.
And our core values here are being respectful of everyone's individual journey, staying rooted in compassion for ourselves and others, promoting growth and expansion, and creating that supportive community that Tim referenced just momentarily. And I think I will just go ahead and dive right in because the community has a lot to say about our topic today, which is anger and guilt. And as I have now begun to do on a weekly basis, I submit the question of what is the purpose of guilt to my friends on Facebook. And I do make it a public thing. So if you want to go and comment yourself each week, I issue another question on what we're going to be talking about on Sunday. But before I bring in all of that commentary, I'd like to talk a little bit about anger because guilt and anger and their relationship will become clear as we just deepen the discussion today. But the first things I want to establish about anger, some things that I have to get off my chest is that I kind of want to put out into the world and the work that I do and everything is that when somebody does something to you that feels insulting, abusive, hurtful, painful, inconsiderate, inconveniencing, or just in any way creates difficulty for you, and then when you react with anger, like if you have anger about that and they perceive that as an infraction of its own, it's a misconception of what anger really is. Anger is not the tit for tat. It is not the equal sin to whatever has occurred to make your life difficult, harmful, painful. So what I'd like to see disappear from the world is people being angry at people being angry at them for doing something harmful to them. So the reason why I like to bring that up is because that's to me how, like, I guess inappropriate levels of guilt tend to manifest, because that type of anger can convert more easily to guilt. The inconveniencing party or the one who does the hurt, the inconsiderate party, then can feel justified in their behavior. And it can become a tit for tat or a cyclical conflict over and over and over again. They got angry at me, so I'm just entitled to do it over and over again. We also see this manifest in society with, the Karen dynamic, or the Kyle as the male version of Karen, and just being angry at, people being angry. And as long
I just
as
want to say,
yeah,
you taught me. I never heard of Kyle before, so
that's an internet thing.
I've got some good friends named Kyle, and apologies for this. And Karens, all you Karens out
Every
there.
Karen I know is like a delightful woman, so it's like kind of
Right.
unfair to my friends, but and Karens, if you're watching, I love you. It's not they're probably so sick of that idiom, but so as long as your response, as long as your anger and your response alongside your anger is not also abusive, insulting, hurtful, inconsiderate, inconveniencing, or creating difficulty, then you're fully entitled to feeling your feelings of anger. It's a signpost of two different things, are two similar things, where a boundary should be, and the fact that you are experiencing a sense of powerlessness. Anger to me always comes back to my sense of powerlessness. And if you have displaced inappropriate or disproportionate anger in your life, where you're getting disproportionately angry at things that shouldn't make you quite that mad, then it's usually at a time in our lives when we feel most disempowered, at a time in our lives where we're just undergoing so much stress that everything feels very disempowering. So when our cat does something like knock over a beloved glass of, a beloved vase or a glass of water, and we get like so ragey at our cat, it may be because we're experiencing just a general sense of powerlessness in our lives, not because our cat necessarily makes us feel powerless. But I also see, and Tim actually brought this into our conversation about this yesterday, is that righteous anger is also a sense of powerlessness. When righteous anger is directed at a concept that is unfair, or a sense of injustice, something that may be very true and very potent, but there's nothing you can do about it because it's at a systemic level, or it's so widespread, or it's so society, like it's so ingrained in society, that powerlessness can feed into our anger. That can also become cyclical. So we refer to sometimes in terms of like dealing with racism as white people, we deal with that sense of white guilt. And that is another form of anger. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is how guilt and anger have a relationship, how they look together in tandem. So I'm going to go right into our commentary via Facebook. So the question was, what is the purpose of guilt? And Aaron here says that behavior modification was his simple, direct answer. He was the first to answer. And Jimmy chimed in almost right away to say essentially the same thing: to teach you to change your behavior. And then Augustus, or as we like to call him, Augie, guilt is the emotional response to escaping another type of pain. A tribe that didn't experience guilt wouldn't last very long. Very potent words there, Augie. I think that escaping another type of pain really relates to what we're going to be discussing today about how guilt and anger relate to one another. Jane, a very introspective fellow interfaith minister, I should say, says, when I observe feelings of guilt, I look as clearly as I can at the source of those feelings in order to determine whether they are justified or not. And that determines whether I need to feel remorse. So Jane also went on to say that further introspection may be needed. And I'm pretty much making her very beloved commentary a lot shorter, but that's the essence of what she said, which I thought was really lovely. Fran says, true guilt is to help identify right and wrong. Guilt has gotten a bad rap because of people who judge and condemn others. This is often used as a power trip of sort. And then I went on to clarify, like a guilt trip. And then Fran, who is related to me and my mom, says yes. And my mom chimed in, yes, guilt trips, so that became a little family conversation about that, which I thought was kind of cool. To learn from mistakes. Guilt is different from shame. So I think Tim's probably going to be talking a little bit more about that. Jill says there should be a distinction between guilt and culpability. So not just between guilt and shame, but guilt and culpability. Culpability is necessary. The emotion of guilt is different. It's pointless to dwell on, which kind of maybe is what someone else Izzy was saying, like it should be distinguished from shame. Like maybe shame is the pointless thing to dwell on. These terms can be used interchangeably. So we have to kind of hold that meaning, because it can mean different things to different people. Behavior can be corrected without feeling bad about what has been done. So that goes into the conversation of shame. Bear says, guilt is a ball and chain. It's kept me needlessly imprisoned for years. I feel guilty about stuff that wasn't even my fault. I try to let it go, but it sticks like bad jam. Oh, Tim's going to have some lovely, lovely tools to offer for that, Bear. who couldn't be with us today. Sorry to hear that, Bear, but she is definitely going to catch us on the rewatch. And then this is probably my favorite comment, and also the favorite comment within the thread. A lot of people liked what Parker had to say. Parker says, can't remember who said it, but it has stuck with me ever since I first heard it. Guilt is the price you pay for holding on to an image of yourself while violating it. That is delicious. So without further ado, I think I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Tim, because you were the one who decided we do this topic, and I could not agree more.
Yeah.
It's a perfect, juicy topic.
Yeah, we had some interesting conversations about this. What April shared with you earlier about, how anger can be conflated with conflict, and it often results in conflict when it becomes a tit for tat in that regard. But just some framing ideas here, and a lot of my perspectives about these emotions come from the work of Cal Banyan and his book, The Secret Language of Feelings. It's a great book. I use these concepts and strategies all the time, and I'll share some of this with you. But they often view we often view guilt and anger as kind of twins. So that's why we paired them up here in the season of Gemini, these twins, where anger is, basically guilt is anger at the self. It can be seen that way, right? So that's how they might be related as twins here. And I think that
Like last
speaks
week,
to,
the twins were guilt, grief, and gratitude. This week, the twins are guilt and anger.
you might see a theme right now during this month.
Yeah.
But it's good to bounce these emotions off of each other. So these are basically what we know as kind of primary feelings that arise when we have an unmet need, want, or desire. And in short, here, based on the secret language of feelings, anger is, it's the thought behind anger is something is unfair. And the thought behind guilt is I've done something unfair. So that you can see the kind of twins in that regard too.
So could
So
that unmet need be like forgiveness or atonement from referring to
well,
previous
yeah, I
episode?
mean, it could be, but we don't necessarily know that. Now we talk about forgiveness as a satisfying response to anger. There's a little more to that, and there can be a lot more to that we can help solve, or you can solve yourself. The more you are able to connect your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, because a lot of this is subconscious, and a lot of the behaviors are knee-jerk reactions when we're angry, our knee-jerk reactions when we're guilty. They're subconscious. We might not consciously know exactly where that's rooted. And so, spiritual counseling or hypnosis and self-hypnosis meditation can help get you in touch with that, especially hypnosis because we do it intentionally. But um, guilt. It's gonna be. I just want to touch on shame too, because in this context, in this framework that I'm talking about, shame is we kind of view that as a complex emotion that can be multiple emotions, and that's really what shame presents as. Like shame can be a combination of anger and guilt. It can be a combination of fear and guilt. It could be a combination of more of these, right? But guilt could, here we could view it as anger of the self. And I'm sorry, I forget which comment that was. It struck me really, really strongly. I think it was Izzy. When we can sometimes be our own worst enemies because we hold ourselves to a really high standard. And when we don't meet that high standard for ourselves, that can result in guilt.
Yeah.
And if there's more to that, it could be shame too. So really here, what I want to share with you guys is, and we'll do a very short hypnotic meditation today too, to help with this, but there is a process that can be really helpful, a conscious mind process that you can use in your everyday life that tends to be really helpful in sorting out some of these feelings. Again, another framing concept here is that from the secret language of feelings, that all feelings are good when they're based on accurate perception, and that
Mm,
they motivate us. And this speaks to some of our astute comments too here. Um, these feelings are there to motivate us. They're a signpost, like April said, but they're there to motivate us to do the sometimes difficult things that we need to do to meet an unmet need, want, or desire. So, in this context of anger and guilt, we kind of view it as anger being, you could synonymize it with unfairness. And that
mhm.
also tends to help conceptually because there's a lot of um, synonymization between anger and aggression, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people might deny their anger. They might
Right.
really feel some anger about something, and they might deny it because they
Because
don't
no one
want
wants to see
to.
themselves as being aggressive. No one wants to see themselves as being a hurtful or pain inducing person. So, oh, if I'm angry, that automatically means I'm causing harm. It's not necessarily the case.
Or a Karen. I don't want to be a Karen or a Kyle.
Right.
This newer version.
Right.
Um, so
That's a good point.
yeah, so these feelings, if we're using them as the signposts that we believe they're there to motivate us to do so. If something's unfair, it might make us angry, and that anger is there to motivate us to make that situation fair if we can. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes it's unactionable. And so this process, let me just share it with you here. And before I do that, let's talk about guilt in the same context really quickly. So guilt, we view that as I've done something unfair to someone. Um, it's there to motivate us to try to make the situation fair if we can.
Yeah.
And sometimes we
Behavior
can't.
modification. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the process goes something like this, and then we'll go into a short hypnotic meditation just to try to help you be able to use this a little bit better in your life, um, and to help you connect more deeply to your subconscious mind, so you might be able to recognize more easily when these feelings arise and what they're there for. So the process is something like this: like you want to identify the feeling, right? So we all know when we feel angry. We know what that feels like. Um, Sometimes we're really good at burying it, or shoving it under the rug, sweeping it under the rug, and we don't
Storing it in
really
our
deal with it.
bodies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Our
In
shoulders.
fact, I've
Yeah.
heard very interestingly a correlation between anger, unsolved anger issues and back pain. And I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any validity to that, but anecdotally, I've heard this about this connection. But we do
I
store
believe
emotions
it.
in our body, and we know what it feels like in our body when we're angry. I mean, just think right now, sometimes something that's made you angry. Like you could probably conjure that feeling pretty readily. It's a potent one. Um, and sometimes we're our own worst enemies. Guilt. We know what guilty feels like in our body. That emotion causes a feeling in our body. And so when we recognize that, we can name the feeling, first of all. We can identify the cause of the feeling by using this simple framework. If we're angry about something, we might ask ourselves, like, what's unfair? What was unfair? And then, further to that, all feelings are good when they're based on accurate perceptions. We need to do a little bit of a reality check. Um, our perceptions are not perfect. um,
By
so
default.
we might, yeah, yeah. So we might have perceived something as being unfair. And then when we stop and reflect a little bit, we might discover that it's not really that unfair, or we might discover that it is absolutely unfair. So
Mhm.
then we can engage in a satisfying response. And
Or maybe
for
just deal with our
anger,
grief.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so here with anger, that a satisfying response would be to make it fair. Sometimes you can't do that. So another satisfying response would be to forgive. We have a whole other episode on this, and it's a loaded topic. We've got specific ways we like to think about forgiveness that are important here. But with guilt, same thing. Name the feeling when you experience it. What's the cause? I did something unfair. What did I do that was unfair? Was it really unfair? A little bit of a reality check. Sometimes we'll discover I've been feeling guilty for years about this thing, and really I didn't do anything that was that unfair. And sometimes just that reality check, just that conscious mind reality check, we can kind of check in with how we're feeling, and that can dissipate the emotion in itself if it's really unfair. But and then if it is truly unfair, the satisfying responses here would be to help uh, make that situation fair that you caused, or forgive yourself, which is really important. So many of us have walk around carrying these levels of guilt, and then it turn into shame and frustration and depression.
Right.
And we need to know how to forgive ourselves here. And sometimes there's a deeper subconscious root here that we need to get at. But just kind of knowing these concepts and knowing this process, I think, can be really helpful. So, April, just before we go into the hypnotic meditation, I just want to see if you have anything to add to that, because we've had some interesting discussions on the topic. We might have covered that up to now, but I just want to check in with you.
Yeah, just for the viewers, I definitely want to encourage you, if this is their first episode that you've watched, to go back and watch particular episodes about forgiveness and atonement and about dealing with grief. So those would be helpful to get a framework of how we approach those things in our work and in this program. So I'll hand it over to you.
Great. So let's do a short hypnotic meditation here. We just want to take some time here. Every week we do this to help us calm our nervous system, uh, kind of help depotentiate our conscious mind that is busy thinking and trying to solve problems all day while we're awake. Um, of course, we can access the subconscious in many ways. Dreams. April does phenomenal dream work if you want help solving some issues through that avenue. And hypnosis does a great job of helping us connect to some subconscious roots behind some feelings we might be experiencing. So just take a moment to settle in to wherever you are in the world. Just take a seat, lie down if you like, get in a comfortable position, and just start to relax your body. And right now, what I'd like you to do first is take your attention to a spot on the wall. Maybe you're outside, just a spot in your field of vision, just above your natural eye gaze. Kind of look something like this, and taking a deep breath. And as you do, really eagle eye that spot. Look at every little detail of that spot, shadows, the texture. And on your next exhalation, I want you to look through that spot. And you might start to notice the corner of the room. Your peripheral vision is engaged. And go ahead and, whenever you're ready, close your eyes. Now I'd like for you to start at the top of your head. I want you to send a wave of relaxation all the way from the top of your head down to the bottom of your feet. 1, 2, 3. And now take your attention to the feeling of the surface beneath you. And as you do, you get a sense of gravity gently holding you close to the earth. And as you focus on this sensation, you feel even more settled and get even more comfortably relaxed into the earth, supported by life itself. And as you take in another deep breath, I'd like you to start to slow your rate of breathing. Just get into a comfortable, slow rate of breathing with a really long exhalation. And just invite any part of your body now, as you're starting to just settle into that surface beneath you, any part of your body that wants to relax even more right now, just let it go. Right now, we're safe, secure. We're taking a few minutes, nothing else to do. to just relax our nervous systems. The more we do this, the more we can establish a stronger connection between our conscious and our subconscious minds. Good. Keep breathing slowly and comfortably. And as you take in another deep breath, I want you to send your awareness down into the earth, deeper and deeper into the earth. You're grounded, supported. Send your awareness down to the very center of the earth now. And as that awareness fades, you go even more deeply and even more comfortably relaxed, grateful for the support you feel from the earth itself. And now I'd like for you to take your awareness and send it up into the sky, up through the atmosphere, up into space, as far into the universe as you'd like to take your consciousness right now. Just up and up and up. And as your awareness of this fades, you go even more deeply relaxed. Once again, feeling the sensation of the surface beneath you, comfortably supporting you. Good. Breathing slowly and comfortably. And so again, the more we allow ourselves, the more we give ourselves permission to relax like this every day, if you can, the more we're going to have access to the wealth of resources that lie within our subconscious minds. We have all of the answers to our problems in our subconscious mind. Our conscious mind is limited. We can only pay attention to so much at any one time. The more we can relax like this, just take in another deep breath now. Send another wave of relaxation from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes. 1, 2, 3. Good. Now, I just want to reiterate the process I described earlier. Now that we're in a relaxed state here, we might be entering into a light state of hypnosis. We might be going into a light alpha brainwave state. If you're feeling particularly comfortably relaxed right now, focusing only on the sound of my voice to the exclusion of everything else in your environment, we might even sink even deeper into a slower brainwave state where we can access our subconscious mind more easily. Our subconscious mind is the seat of our emotions. And when we begin to feel the feeling of anger or guilt, it's coming from our subconscious minds, coming into our conscious awareness, often causing a feeling in the body. You know what this feels like when you feel angry or when you feel guilty. So now just by tuning in here in a relaxed and focused state, next time those feelings come up inside of you, you're more easily able to recognize this is anger. I'm feeling angry. This is guilt. I'm feeling guilt. You'll feel what it feels like in your body. You might often also take a moment, just in that moment, to relax your nervous system. As humans, we always get better with practice. The more you're able to take some time, give yourself permission to relax like this every day, the easier this becomes to sink into a focused, relaxed state that's extremely restorative and can be very insightful. So you know what those feelings feel like. You're able to more easily name that feeling. And with anger, it's often surrounding something that's unfair. What was unfair? Now that you know what anger feels like, you're able to identify it. You can more quickly and easily ask yourself, what was unfair? Was it really unfair? If it was really unfair, that anger might be there to help you make that situation fair if you can. Otherwise, just this practice in itself will help mitigate reactions, behavioral loops that come from the resurgence of this emotion. You might develop a pattern of behavior when these emotions arise, especially around anger. You might notice in the coming week, the more you're doing this, the more you're stopping to identify the feeling, name the cause, do a little reality check, the more easily you're able to mitigate irritable, knee-jerk reactions. Same with guilt. You know what guilt feels like. Next time you recognize this feeling, you can name that. You know what guilty feels like. What's the cause? You might have done something unfair, but was it really unfair? If it was not really unfair, what you did, your feeling of guilt might just dissipate all on its own. It might be a little deeper than that, or you might have done something truly unfair. And so that guilt is there to help motivate you to try to make it fair, if you can. And if you can't, if it's unactionable, then forgiving yourself might be the next work to do here. So I'm going to pause for just a moment and allow you to just bask in this very comfortable, focused state of whole body relaxation. Again, if there's any part of your body that's holding any tension right now, just wants to relax even further, this state feels so good to the body. Just let it go. Let your whole body feel this comfortable, relaxed state. Again, the more often we allow ourselves, the more often we give ourselves permission to enter into a focused and relaxed state like this, the less likely we are to respond to our emotions in ways that we might regret. The more easily we can check in with these emotions, identify the cause, and identify a potential satisfying response. This is a really powerful way we can help ourselves with emotions that tend to be troublesome. If we're not really paying attention to the accuracy of the perception behind the emotion, what's causing the emotion. Good. Moment of silence here just to relax into the surface beneath you. In a moment, I'm going to count from 3 back to 1. And we're going to come right back to waking consciousness right here, feeling great, feeling refreshed, maybe feeling a little more energized for the day as well. 3, coming back now, get a sense of that surface beneath you supporting you. 2, get a sense of the sensation of your feet right now. And 1, opening your eyes back to waking consciousness right here back with us. And thanks for joining us for this hypnotic meditation today.
That was awesome, Tim. I was able to do it the whole time today. That's not always possible for me.
Awesome.
Yeah. And definitely dealing with those same problems that we're talking about myself. I think it's a pretty universal thing, but just to name that I too deal with feelings of guilt, shame, and anger. I sometimes feel like I have a rage issue when it comes to feeling feelings of disproportionate anger. Maybe it's the nature of being an Aries, or maybe it's just how I was raised or runs in my family. But these are things that I want to name out loud because I feel like honoring that these are things that I'm dealing with as somebody of some authority in this world of emotional work. That we're not all, that none of us are perfect, and that these are useful tools because we know that they're useful tools because we use them. And Tim has been able to help me a great deal across the years with these things,
I
and
also
lately
want
with
to add
hypnosis.
here
Tim, you wanted to add something? Oh dear, we've lost Tim. All right. Well, let's go ahead and close the show. We hope that Tim will be able to rejoin us to say farewell to all of you. But we will be back in 2 weeks. That we will have another episode of Subconscious Sundays, not on the first Sunday in June, but most definitely the second Sunday in June. So we'll be announcing the topic of that episode, as well as issuing another question for the audience on my personal Facebook page. So look out for that. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.